Hello everyone and welcome. Sit back, relax, make a cup of tea or whatever you like to drink and get ready for new stories from YellowCat. Send your own favorite stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. So subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet, and let's get started. Has anyone ever furiously quit their job? Why? Did this have any unintended consequences? Part 6. I should have known better before I started work for an acquaintance. He was the ultimate piece of human waste. He wanted access to my network of contacts in order to gain more business since I have a solid professional reputation. That's okay for the most part, but he would consistently overpromise and underdeliver, damaging the relationship I worked so hard to establish. Even when he knew weeks in advance about the location of projects, he would give me little to no notice when I had to travel for them. He didn't tell me anything and sent me to cover for him across the bloody country when he couldn't complete the project plan in time for a customer. Thank God one of his old contacts. I went, got chewed out by his customer, busted my butt, and worked through the night to finish weeks' worth of work. When I asked him how long he needed me to work on his project, he yelled at me over the phone. My kids were quite disappointed that they were unable to attend the family gathering we had been planning for months, and my wife was furious. I called him back, and after he yelled, I told him I was going to be returning to the office that evening. After providing the customer with all the necessary paperwork and starting the workers, I handed the foreman his employee schedule and departed. Customer C really liked working with you, so they wanted you to complete this project, this guy said in a furious tone when I arrived at the office and asked why I had left. Are you joking with me? I couldn't take it anymore, and I didn't have another job waiting for me, so I was furious. I just ignored his tirades, gave him the keys to the company car, typed and printed all the passwords for everything I was working on, and turned to leave. "Where the F do you think you're going?" he exclaimed as he attempted to grab my arm and drag me back into the office. I simply ignored him, withdrew my arm, and proceeded toward the front door. He began to scream, telling me that he needed the work and that I should leave the contact details for this company and the other. I yelled at him so loudly that it hurt my throat, kind of losing my composure and saying, "My contacts trust me because I don't trust guys like you. You're making yourself unprofitable. I give up. I will never recommend you to anyone, and I will never work with your company." I was so angry that I was on the verge of tears when he said something about not caring and having his own contacts. Just got into my car and drove away. It felt like being let out of jail. Never work for someone you don't know or can't confirm with other experts. The thought of this guy still makes me angry, as does the trembling, horrible sound of my voice as I yell at him. Instead of swearing and throwing things, I just gave up and backed down. Ugh. I used to work for a store that sold radio-controlled cars, helicopters, and planes when I was 14 years old. At the time, I didn't mind that I was hired at less than the minimum wage for my age because I was only expected to perform straightforward, easy tasks. But soon, I was in charge of economy, organizing his paperwork, and phoning clients to apologize for errors on the part of the business. If I hadn't been underpaid and 14 years old, this would have been okay, but I wasn't too bothered because I got to work on my RC stuff. Then one day, he wanted to open a club. Special rules apply. You have to be a member of a club to fly here. Although the club was supposed to be totally separate from the store, many staff members of the store also served on the club's administrative board. Coming up was the big plane-related event, and I had promised myself that, weather permitting, I would set up a stall there and promote the club, obviously unpaid. Additionally, I was given some flyers to distribute for the store, which is a little strange because the club and the store shouldn't be related. I had no idea that the store was hosting a big grill night with all the other staff members where customers could test drive small drones and remote-controlled cars. Fun times all around, with hours that are paid. The weather services were alerting me to a minor storm that was developing in that area, so as the day broke, I came to the realization that the conditions would not permit me to set up shop at all. They were getting ready for the grill event when I went down to the store to return the flyers. When I went in to ask my boss what more I could do, I was called a bad boy and cussed out. What the F? I said nothing at all as I turned to leave. We had a mutual FU that day and I didn't talk to them again. P.S. The store closed about a month later. I found out that although it had closed before owing financial difficulties, this was the final instance. I was a bad diner employee. Business was appalling. It was so bad that I had to work alone to take orders, prepare the food, and serve it. There was just me and the building. I worked with one other girl. Following several warning signs and a year or so, my boss found severe discrepancies in the books. For example, when I would count my drawer at the end, the other girl would go in the following day and find that, say, 100 was missing, or the other way around. And I wasn't the only one who wasn't stealing it. She was the best worker, though, and put in more hours than I did. Furthermore, the owner didn't even bother to look for minor differences like the one I just brought up. He believed that someone from outside had taken it, so no one was fired. This is also conceivable because of our terrible hardware, which required us to manually open registers in front of customers using a little switch underneath rather than a key. There was no security in place, and the back door was just a regular door that could be broken into. So, who knows? Maybe it was my coworker, maybe it was a former employee, everyone was given a key, maybe it was a customer who watched us open the registers and happened to notice the back door when she was using the restroom. The back door was located across the restrooms. There are several reasonable theories. Either way, it was clear that the owner was under stress, but that didn't mean he was any longer the boss. Basically, my coworker just quit doing everything she was supposed to be doing, like cleaning and stocking. She was bad before, but she was even worse. She would disregard my reminder to turn off the gas when I went to do a thorough clean by myself on Sunday. Otherwise, everything was still too hot, so cleaning was impossible and not done. I texted my boss 4 or 5 weeks later after failing to clean the grill once more. I also told him about the valuable 5 weeks. I told him that it was intentional because my reminders were large signs next to the switches, so there was no use in my coming if my colleague hadn't turned off the gas. He told me that he didn't respond to ultimatums and that my drama with my coworker was hurting the business when he came in a few hours later the following day. Something inside of me snapped when he screamed in my face. I got up and clocked out quietly. I then removed my key from its chain, placed it on the countertop, and turned to leave, leaving him on his own without any clients. An hour later, I noticed he had closed up while driving past my 5-minute commute. That was a year ago, and in June he closed. Just walked away from the place after spending crazy money on elaborate cameras and audio recorders above the registers. I'd love to hear some scary HOA stories, part 6. Not me, but my friends. This occurred roughly 12 to 13 years ago. When we were all in college, Rob and Ken, two of my friends, were renting a condo from Ken's parents. This was a standard condo complex with no extras, kind of run down, but it was owned by a homeowners association. The main hags who dominated the association hated that college-age kids were living there, even though none of us were noisy or partied. They would non-stop beating on my friend's door and listing all the imaginary and actual transgressions they claimed they had committed. One day, Rob, his then girlfriend, Ken, me, and my now wife were all grilling out on the back porch. After we finished our dinner, Rob and I would just sit around his short charcoal grill and drink beer. The HOA thugs then approached Rob and Ken on the porch and informed them that fire pits were not allowed. In addition to pointing out that it was a charcoal grill, which was allowed, Rob also mentioned that the hag owned a grill that was extremely similar. Hers, she claimed, was permitted because its legs were longer than his, and even though it was only a grill, it looked enough like a fire pit to be against the HOA rules. Rob retorted that the HOA agreement contained no requirements regarding the height of the grill, and that the grill was fully safe and compliant, allowing her to leave his porch. She insisted that we put out the fire right away because, in her opinion, it was a fire pit and threatened to report him if he disobeyed. At last, he told her to get the F off the porch because she was intruding. She knew this was a baseless complaint. With the final threat to report him, she left. She probably did, but it didn't go anywhere. The board was the builder, his wife, and his sister-in-law when our neighborhood was still being built. It wasn't strange, and they were nice to work with. Our house was one of the first ones to be built, and we got along well with the builder. Sometimes they had to deal with problems that affected the whole neighborhood, but they didn't know about them because they didn't live there and left every day at 3 p.m. That's when I came in. I became the way for the residents and the developer/board to talk to each other. Some of the stupid crap that came through was really funny. Because a mother didn't like how I was following the leash law, she emailed all of her neighbors telling them to call me and tell me I wasn't following the leash law for the county. Like what the police or animal control do? The email was sent to my wife too. The answer we gave was fun. The lady still doesn't talk to me. We're in charge of maintaining our own streets, which include removing snow. It's 2 a.m. and the phone is going off. Why? Because some nut has decided to drive around the neighborhood and measure how much snow is on the street. There's a ½ inch of snow and the street still hasn't been plowed? Lady, they said it would snow 6 inches. In fact, we got 9. Sorry, Mabel, but the street won't be clear until the plow company comes. Also, please do not call me at night again. Kids, never, ever, ever wind up on an HOA board, ever. 2011. I was always fighting with the HOA hag in my neighborhood. She looked to be in her 70s and had a huge sequoia stuck up her sagging spiderweb covered A. I kept getting mail order fines from this skeletal demon for things I never even did. Someone intoxicated tore through my front yard, $150 fine for an untidy yard one day following the event. I took a business trip and missed 9 days of lawn mowing, $100 fine, no law care. On a business trip, some butthole parked in my lawn, $50 fine for parking on a street or driveway. The hill behind our property was technically his land, but the neighbor neglected to mow it. $150 fine to me for an untidy yard. I attempted to address the problems and fictitious fines in a polite manner, but the swamp hag would not have it. I began sending blank envelopes to the Homeowners Association with the words "blow it out your A" written in a Sharpie. Hag wasn't with the HOA when they eventually sent 3 representatives to my house. I showed them my initiary and the boundaries of my property, and they graciously waived the fines. My yard had a drainage problem that I had to fix. Water accumulated at my foundation due to poor grading. To improve the drainage, I regraded the backyard and constructed a retaining wall myself. I once noticed movement in my backyard while I was seated in my living room. There she was, the Draugr Queen, complete with a camera and clipboard. She began to take photos in the rear of my house. "Can I help you?" I asked as I went outside. "I'm Haggy McHaggis from the HOA. "All right, this belongs to me. Kindly depart now." "I can be here if I want." "You cannot, in fact. Now go." She then made a threat to contact the police. It was a rough week for me. Really not a good month. "Look, you withered husk. Here are your 2 options," I said. "I'm gonna have you leave or get the H off my property and go back to your sarcophagus." She gave me a librarian's constipation look and stomped her foot. I entered, retrieved my weapon, proceeded to the window, and emptied it, since it was empty anyhow. Hearing the ch-ch, she scampered off, most likely sprinkling some 1994 prune dust on her grandmother's pants. The police arrived 30 minutes later and inquired as to whether everything was okay. I racked an empty weapon to make my point after explaining that the crypt keeper was invading and that she wouldn't go, legal, not brandishing, well within my rights. A police officer commented, "That's a bit extreme. You're an athletic younger guy and she's a retired woman." "Have you ever seen the movie Legion?" was my reply to him. It seems that he understood the illusion and had to suppress his amusement. They departed. Beelzebabushka never got in touch with me again, relocated from that neighborhood after a few years. During the time that we were closed, we had a group of retirees take power of the HOA. The HOA for our condo was listed at $35 per month. It was only after we had moved in that we discovered that we had paid $35 to the master HOA development and $100 to the condo HOA. We were young newlyweds who had no prior experience or knowledge. In order to handle everything, the elderly men hired themselves. Retired and probably made more money than they did while working. $30 per hour to shovel snow. Their own walkways were shoveled, and then shovels were placed in the stairwells of the building. Even though we used a management agency, the hourly rate for bookkeeping was $40. While the fees increased, the services decreased. To perform some maintenance, we were also required to pay assessments that totaled an additional $500 per year. The situation reached a boiling point when the president convinced his daughter to rent a unit, and she revealed to us that she had been promised a full-time position as his secretary. When all was said and done, we staged a coup. In accordance with the bylaws, a small election was called for, contacted the owners of the property, and received a sufficient number of votes. As president, my wife was elected. The maintenance truck parking spot he had created for himself was covered by her painting. The assessment was reversed by her establishing a community day during which individuals had the option of either paying or working for 2 hours to perform maintenance and landscaping. We were subjected to threats and notices from a depressed elderly man for a period of 6 months prior to his placement in a nursing home. If you want to watch the part 5, click the link here. Thank you for subscribing, the likes, and comments. We're very happy to see you all in the comments too. Thanks for your support.